Good evening, exiles. So it's the beginning of the month, so I'm going to do another video on a hero we can learn from. The only other video I've done of this was about Nehemiah, so I'll put a link up here, whichever where it appears. And I'm going to put this in a playlist too. But I'm outside to do this one because it's really nice out, and this should be the last. Or we're running out of nice weather. It's getting near the end of the year. But anyway, so the hero for today, or this month, that I want to discuss is Smedley Butler. U.S. Major General, fought from the Spanish-American War into World War I. He did a lot of awesome, great things. He also did some pretty not so good things that we can learn from. And I'm not going to go through all the details of his life. I encourage you to learn more about the man. And also read his book, War is a Racket. But he's the most decorated Marine until World War II. And so let's start out with how he joined the Marines and work our way up from there. So his parents wanted him to go to college, and this is when very few people went to college. It was a big deal if somebody went to college. It's not like now where like half the people who graduate high school or more go to college, whatever the number is. It's more like you might know somebody who went to college. Anyway, so he decides he doesn't want to go to college. He wants to be more of a rough and tumble kind of guy and get out of his upper middle class New England lifestyle where he doesn't do much in the real world. He doesn't want to be a businessman. He wants to get out in the real world and engage with his hands and do things and fight against nature and use his mind and his body together. So he ends up there. The American-Spanish War starts, and the Marine Corps needs officers, and they're so desperate for officers that they waive the requirement for you to be a college graduate or from well-connected, the proper families to become, because back then you didn't need to necessarily go to college. You could just be from the right family. Sorry about that. So Smedley Butler decides he's going to get in, become a Marine officer under this new rule. And he doesn't go to officer candidacy school because they're so desperate for officers. They just throw people like him that qualify, that pass the test, in as lieutenants. So he goes off to fight the Spanish-American War. He does really awesome at it. He actually does, I believe it's at this point in time in his life, it may be in the Philippines, I'm pretty sure it's at this point in time, where he actually does some stuff, saves some wounded soldiers and does some really heroic stuff in battle that should have earned him a Medal of Honor. But at the time they weren't giving Medal of Honors to officers, only enlisted people can get it, so he didn't get one. Which he seemed to be fine with. Well then, Spanish-American War is over. He gets kicked out. He's trying to find something to do. Well, then he floats around from job to job, and then the Philippine War starts. Well, when the Americans start a war in the Philippines, or get involved in a war in the Philippines, we need officers again. And what they do is they say, well, if you were an officer in the American Spanish War, you can just become an officer now in the Philippine War. So he becomes an officer, goes over to the Philippine War, he fights. This is when he decides he wants to stay in the Army, or Marines, he gets to stay in. But while he's over there, he sees a bunch of Marines get in a lot of trouble and cause a lot of problems with drinking. And he also drinks a lot, and it causes him some issues. He ends up getting a demotion sometime around this time because of his drinking and his behavior when he's drunk. So he decides he's not going to drink anymore and becomes a member of the Prohibitionist movement at the time. Now he doesn't know people, he's not well connected yet, so just becoming a member of the Prohibition movement didn't mean much yet. So as he works his way through the wars, and different wars, he gets involved in one of the wars that he's involved, or one the U.S. is involved in, and in those actions, he doesn't do anything he thinks deserves of a Medal of Honor. And that battle went, that whole operation the Marines were involved in there went really badly politically. So they gave a whole bunch of Medal of Honors to people, and Smedley Butler was one of them. And he's like, listen, I didn't earn this Medal of Honor, because officers can get Medal of Honors at that point. He's like, I didn't earn this, I don't want it. And for political reasons, he was ordered to take it. And this is when he starts learning about politics and playing the political game. So he fights in a few more wars, up into World War I. And fights in a bunch of wars leading up to World War I. And then after World War I, he takes a leave. This is during the 1920s. He takes a leave of absence from the military. By then he's already a general, to become a police chief in Boston. And by this time he's worked his way up in the Abolitionist Society. That's why he's taking a job in Boston during the 1920s and as the police chief. And he goes in and he roots out the corruption in the police, which I love that he did that. But then he starts going out, he starts hammering speakeasies. And he doesn't just go after the speakeasies the poor people are involved in. He goes after the speakeasies the rich and the well-connected go to. And politically, you're not supposed to do that. Those speakeasies had all the connections, and people just left them alone. So that caused him a lot of problems politically. And also, he was a ruthless thug at being a police chief. Maybe he was a police commissioner, but anyway, head of the police. And he basically treated the police like Marines going in a foreign nation, invading them. They'd beat people up, they'd arrest people without cause, throw them in jail for as long as they could hold them before they had to release them, trying to get information out of them, all this stuff that was illegal. And this is the part of Smedley Butler that I don't like. He did all these heroic acts and became the most, had more medals than any other Marine up until World War II. He has these periods of his life like this, like, where he does awful things and he never repents of them. But he's doing the awful things for the right reasons. The right reasons. He's seen how alcoholism destroys people's lives, and he doesn't want other people to destroy their lives with alcohol. So he's trying to prevent anybody from drinking. But in the process of doing that, he's destroying people's lives himself. So that's an important thing I think we all need to learn, is doing the wrong thing for the right reasons is still the wrong thing. Even this highly decorated, brave Marine did some awful things, but he did them for the right reasons, and we can all fall underneath that trap. There's a book I haven't read yet, but Ordinary Men, about some Germans during World War II. They're ordinary Germans trying to do the right thing, and they ended up getting sucked into Nazism and did some horrible things. Things I'm not going to talk about on YouTube because it'll get strikes and maybe get me banned. But you should look into the Ordinary Men thing and read the book. I'm going to read the book as soon as I can get around to it. It's on my book reading list. But anyway, but Smedley Butler also, or after he was police commissioner or whatever, and got kicked out of that job for being a thug, he got back in the Marine Corps. But he started talking about the problems with the military and how every war he's been to, he spent part of his time guarding assets for like U.S. steel companies and U.S. oil companies and stuff like this. And he saw all these problems where poor people go to war and they die, and rich people become more rich, and they actually use U.S. military to enrich themselves through their political connections. And that's how fascism works. There is no difference between the government and these corporations. So the corporations are having problems in this country, so they get their politician buddies to start a war to help secure them, to secure their assets and help them in that country. And that's how fascism actually works. That Nazis weren't fascist. Nazis were socialists, because the Nazis owned all the companies. Fascism is where you have a company like Facebook, and you have the government, and Facebook and the government work together in order to squash opinions that the two of them don't like. So if you say something on Facebook that the government doesn't like, and you're loud enough and have enough followers, the government will put you on a list, give that to Facebook, and Facebook will start throttling you. And you can Google that. The previous Jen Psaki, the previous press secretary, she actually said that's what they do. And that's how fascism works. And he hated that this was going on, so he started protesting and speaking out against it as a U.S. military general. And so right before World War II, when the U.S. government knew we were going to be getting involved in World War II, they basically fired him. And that's why he was such a well-decorated general from a time when we had all these other well-decorated generals, but you don't hear his name. You don't hear the Smedley Butler Marine outpost, or you don't hear the Smedley Butler fighting vehicle like you do with these other people around the same time. There is no Smedley Butler tank. So that's pretty much all I got about the guy. Sorry my phone messed up there. Got a spam call and ruined the video. But that's the way the world works. So anyway, long story short about Smedley Butler. He was an average upper middle class guy, worked hard, used his brains and his ability to lead and his skills as a real tough man, learned to become more tough and really able to deal with anything that came up in his life, and became a great leader of men. We can all learn from that. Learn that he was causing his own issues, and most of the problems he was causing were because of his own activities when he stopped drinking. And we can all learn to cut out activities that cause us issues in our own lives, whether it be drinking or smoking or eating too much fast food. Anything like that, we can learn from him to start cutting that stuff, try to cut that stuff out of our own lives to make our lives better and the lives of people around us better. But at the same time, we can't become dictators and order people to do that. We shouldn't even vote. Like, if we have a problem with something, like I eat too much fast food, but I shouldn't even vote to pass laws or vote for politicians or anything like that. They're trying to pass anti-fast food laws. That's something I need to work on. I don't need a law to tell other people that they can't do it because I have a problem with it. And that's something Smedley Butler was bad at, and we should learn from that mistake of his. And we should also, I recommend everybody read his book and actually look into the stuff he was talking about how corporations and politicians work together and they throw the little guy under the bus just to make a buck all around the world. And it's pretty bad, some of the stuff. Look up what Prescott Bush was doing. That's George H.W. Bush's dad. Look up what he was doing during World War II if you want to see some of this corruption and politicians and business people working together. That was pretty nasty. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope you go and do more research into this man and learn more about him and what we can and can't learn from him. If you have anything you learn from him and you like about him, put it in the comments. If you have suggestions about other heroes we can talk about and we can all learn from, put those in the comments too. Thank you for watching. I hope this really helps enlighten you. And I know the more I learn about him, the more, or when I started learning about him and heard about him, I learned a lot and like, oh, okay, there's some stuff I can work on in my life and stuff like that that I learned from him. So thank you for watching, and remember, we, his servants, will start rebuilding.